Guys, for the first time in like 5 years, it finally feels like hip hop is alive again. We got the return of King Kung Fu Kenny. He's at people's throats. He's ready to go. He's saying there ain't no big three. It's just big me. All right. He's got demon energy. He's ready to attack. But I have a hot take here. I do not think that Drake is going to respond to this. I just don't. I can't see what approach he's going to take. All right. And we're going to dive into this. But if you've been living under a rock, basically over the weekend, Kendrick Lamar jumped on Future's new album and he was dissing Drake. He was saying his legacy is going to outlive Drake's. He was saying Drake's biggest albums are light work compared to Kendrick's biggest album. He was saying he was going to bury Drake. Like, he was going at it, all right? And this really reminded me of the first time that Pusha T went at Drake. If you guys don't remember, it didn't start with Pusha T exposing Drake's kid. That's not how their beef started. How it started was Pusha T was just taking some subliminals at Drake on his album. He was throwing some light shots. Drake came back with a full-blown diss track, and then Pusha T just unloaded on him. Pause on that. No Diddy, all right? Now, this kind of seems like that same energy. Like, Kendrick, was coming a little more aggressive than Pusha T did, but it just sounds like he's telling Drake, like, listen, like, you think there's no competition out here, but I'm here. I'm better than you. I'm going to outlive you. And, like, come at me, bro, and let's see what you're about.
And I really think because of how calculated Drake is with how he kind of maneuvers his brand and his reputation,
I don't think he's going to respond to this. Now, there's a bunch of different reasons I don't think he's going to respond to this. Number one, like I just said, like, Drake plays chess with his brand, right? With every move he makes, it's super, super calculated. But let's think about it. Kendrick's not that active of a rapper. He'll drop every 2-3 years. He's not that much of a threat to Drake, like, especially this late in his career. Drake could easily ignore this diss, pretend like it never happened, drop another album, and it'll be just as successful as his last album was. I don't think this does anything to Drake's career. Now, if Drake actually engages in this beef and loses, that could be a little rough for him, right? Because it's just going to add a little chink in his armor, a little stain to his legacy where he got outbarred by somewhere else. He can no longer rap about being the top #1 MC because there's another MC who just destroyed him, right? But if he stays silent, doesn't say a word, what's Kendrick gonna do? Like, Kendrick drops a verse every 2 years, So even if Kendrick keeps coming at Drake, which I don't think he would, he's barely active in the game as it is. So what's he gonna drop a diss song against Drake every 2 years? And I don't see any realm of possibility where if Drake stays silent in all this, Kendrick will continue dissing him, right? Like, if Drake doesn't respond to this diss at all, I don't think you'll ever hear Kendrick mention it again. It's just not in his character, right? Like, I can't see him pulling a Joe Budden and dropping like 20 diss songs at Drake until Drake answers him. And that's another big thing, right? Like, with Joe Budden, let's be real. Drake knew he couldn't outbar Joe Budden, but Drake had the advantage at the time because Joe Budden had no mainstream success, right? Like, no one in the mainstream really knew who Joe Budden was at the time that he was dissing Drake. So all Drake had to do was ignore him. Joe Budden could put out 25 diss songs against him, and it did nothing because no one really cared for Joe Budden in the mainstream. The difference here is people know who Kendrick is. They always pin Kendrick against Drake. But I do think Drake is a chess player, right? He calculates every single move, and I think he could see that if he doesn't say a word about this, it'll blow over in a couple weeks. No one will mention it. Kendrick will go back in his cave and drop an album every 5 years, and no one will ever speak of this again. Kendrick's not going to come back with 20 diss songs like Joe Budden did. And Drake could just go on and keep having the same career and success that he's been having, and no harm, no foul, right? But if Drake does decide to engage in this, this is just going to turn into a full-out war. And can he really go up head-to-head against Kendrick? I think he knows that he can't. Now, obviously, that's subjective. I'm sure I'll have some people in the comments going at me disagreeing, but, like, it is what it is, right? Like, Kendrick is just a lyrical monster. So just keep that in perspective. I hope Drake answers. I think this is great for hip-hop, no matter what. I think we're winning either way. But I'm really curious to see how this plays out. And in the grand scheme of things, I think Drake probably deep down knows it might be smarter for his legacy and for his long-term success and public perception to just let this one slide, go to bed. I mean, he's even putting up Instagram captions saying, his phone's on Do Not Disturb because he's in Turks or something like that. Like, he's not dumb enough to fall into this trap, right? He kind of did fall into it with Pusha T. He fell into that trap. But if he's as smart with his reputation and his moves as I think he has been throughout his entire career, he could probably see that Kendrick is trying to bait him right now. Kendrick is trying to drag him into a war that Drake has a very low chance of winning, let's be real, right? And let me explain to you why Drake has a very low chance of winning this war. Because Drake has went against lyricists before. Like, Drake has went against Common, and I would argue he kind of won that beef. And he's went at Pusha T, and I would even argue Drake's diss track, it didn't have the shock value Pusha T's had, but, like, he came barred up. He came ready to actually rap. But, I mean, maybe, music's subjective, but I don't think he holds a candle to Kendrick's technical rapping abilities. And I think he knows that. And I think he knows that if they get into this, full-blown beef where both of them are going at each other with diss tracks, like, there's no angle he could take, right? Because let's analyze, some of the last few beefs Drake has had, right? Obviously, he won the beef with Meek Mill, and he won that for a couple of reasons, right? Number one, Meek just came with a horrible diss track to Drake, so like all Drake had to do was drop a very average diss track, and he would have won that beef. But he didn't drop an average diss track; he dropped a hit song. It was the first time since like "Hit 'Em Up" by Tupac where like a rap diss song was an actual like global hit, where you could play it on the radio, you could play it at the clubs, you could play it everywhere. Plus, Meek Mill was just such an easy target at the time, right? He was out on tour with Nicki Minaj. He was opening up for her. He was also super jealous of Drake and Nicki. Like he was a very easy target, Meek. Let's just put it at that. Very easy target. Now with Kendrick, he can't really take that hit song as a diss song approach, right? Like if he goes at Kendrick and responds to the shots that Kendrick already took, he can't do it in the form of a hit song, right? Because Kendrick will just come with a bar-focused response and just bar Drake to death, right? Like just hit him with ruthless bars. So he can't come at him the way he came at Meek with a hit song. Plus, the bigger reason is that Kendrick's not really an easy target like Meek Mill, right? What does Drake have against Kendrick? The only thing I could think of is the fact that he brought Kendrick out on tour. Before Kendrick dropped Good Kid, Mad City, he was opening up for Drake on tour. But it's not like Drake put him on, It's not like a Party Next Door or a Weekend type situation where like Drake introduced Kendrick to the world. Kendrick still had a small following before that, and like the quality of Good Kid, Mad City was what brought him to that level of superstardom that he has. It wasn't because of Drake. So what does Drake really have on Kendrick, right? So Drake doesn't have enough ammo on Kendrick to make like a really good hit song that is also a diss song against Kendrick. I can't see him making a back-to-back against Kendrick. He's going to have to come with some bars. But I think he kind of learned his lesson from the Pusha T situation that like he doesn't want to go up against these, these lyrical monsters, these bar-heavy monstrous machines, right? I don't think he can do it. I think he knows that. Like, let's be real right now. Drake is not in his prime lyrically. There hasn't been an active rapper making as many hits or big albums or as big of an impact as Drake in years. Kendrick has been inactive. Drake Cole is up there 100%. But like, aside from him, who else is making waves the way Drake is? And I think he's kind of taken that as an opportunity to focus more on keeping up with like the youth, working with guys like Eat or guys like Central C or clicking up with the streamers and all that, instead of focusing on, sharpening his pen and becoming a better rapper, because that's not where the money is, right? Like back in the 2010s, you had guys like Kanye, A$AP Rocky, Mac Miller, Freddie Gibbs, all of TDE, Odd Future, Nipsey Hussle. Like you had all these guys who were super active and their music was more focused on lyricism and bars, right? So Drake had to keep up with that. But nowadays, hip-hop isn't about that. Like, the biggest rap stars right now are Travis Scott, Playboi Carti, Uzi, Future, whoever. These guys aren't focusing predominantly on being strong MCs. They're focusing on melodies and autotune and rage music and unique flows and stuff like that. So Drake is trying to compete in that lane. He hasn't really been focused on progressing as a lyricist, in my opinion, in many years. And for that reason, I don't think he thinks he's prepared enough to go at a guy like Kendrick. His pen isn't sharp enough right now. He's not in that mode. Now, do I hope he gets back in that mode? 100%. I would love to see Drake respond and, if he could, somehow destroy Kendrick lyrically. I would love to see that. Do I think he even thinks it's possible? Do I think he thinks he can stand face to face with Kendrick as an MC? No, I don't. And you already know that if this turns into a full-out beef, right, like where Kendrick and Drake are dissing each other, Kendrick will keep it strictly hip-hop. This won't be a Pusha T situation where Kendrick is, bringing up that Drake has a kid that he's hiding or some secret, piece of gossip that no one knew about. And it won't be like Meek Mill either, where Meek Mill's exposing Drake for ghostwriters and then just kind of, going off on Twitter and stuff like that. Like, there won't be drama involved like that. It's going to be strictly lyric based. It'll be strictly hip hop. If there's an actual full blown beef between Kendrick and Drake, it will be strictly diss tracks, strictly bars. And like, I don't think Drake thinks he can stand toe to toe with Kendrick and do that. And I don't think he thinks it's worth it to do that, because does the risk really outweigh the reward? I think he knows that it might not be too smart to engage in this one, but listen, I could be wrong. I hope I am, because I'd love to see these two actually engage in a beef. That would be super exciting for hip hop. I'm looking forward to it. And also, one thing I definitely got to give Drake the most credit on is that even though in my opinion Kendrick might be a better technical MC, Drake is really the only guy who's kept hip hop interesting in the last like 10 years, right? Whether it's all the beefs he's engaged in, the constant release of new music every single year, trying out new sounds, whether you like them or not, he's always giving you something to talk about. And the most talked about moments, the most exciting moments of the last 10 years have probably come from Drake, right? Whether it's his beefs with Meek Mill or Pusha T, or his, insane runs where he would just drop like 5 chart-topping hits in the span of a year, all the features he's done, like all of the best hip-hop moments in the last decade really have come from Drake. Like, let's keep it real. So I do think that Drake deserves to sit this one out if he wants to. And I think he probably does want to, right? Like, why? It would be exhausting to try to engage in a rap beef against Kendrick, man. And for what? Why would that be worth his time, right? He could just sit this one out, and it's very, very improbable that Kendrick will come back with a full-blown diss track if Drake doesn't say anything about this going forward. And considering how calculated Drake is with the moves he makes, I'm sure he knows that Kendrick is trying to bait him into a full-out beef. I'm sure he knows that it would take a lot of exhaustion and effort to actually keep up lyrically with the type of diss tracks Kendrick would throw at him. And I'm sure he knows Kendrick has a diss track waiting and ready for when Drake gives his response. So what does Drake actually stand to gain by engaging in a beef with Kendrick? But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is it worth it for Drake to respond? How could he even come at Kendrick? What could he say, right? Like, what approach can he take? Anyways, let me know. Appreciate y'all if you stuck around. Please subscribe, like this video, and yeah, let's see what happens from here, man. All I know is that hip-hop definitely feels like it's back alive. I love it.